I think, Sam, the biggest mistake people can make is to say, well, if I find a great deal, the money will come.
Right.
I feel like you have to warm up a lot of money in order to posture with brokers who control a lot of the deal flow, as we know, or even posture up with a seller, if you're direct to seller, to tell that broker and the seller, I've got all this money warmed up. I'm just looking for the right deal, right? Versus send me deal. And then I got to go hustle to find all the money. I had a friend of mine who just lost $450,000 of hard earnest money on a deal because they couldn't get it all raised and closed. They went through 2 extensions and then still couldn't close, lost 450 grand. That's a painful ass lesson, right?
Welcome to the How to Scale Commercial Real Estate Show. Whether you are an active or passive investor, we'll teach you how to scale your real estate investing business into something big.
Josh Cantwell has been an entrepreneur his entire adult life. With his partners, he now owns and manages over 4,400 units of value-add apartments. Josh, welcome to the show.
Hey, Sam. Thanks for having me on, man. I've been looking forward to this one. Let's get it going, man. Thank you.
As have I. There are 3 questions Josh asks every guest who comes on the show in 90 seconds or less. Can you tell me, where did you start? Where are you now? And how did you get there?
I started actually as a financial planner. I learned about real estate because my clients all owned more money and had more money in real estate than the stock market. So I started way back in my early 20s. Where am I at right now? I'm happy. I probably work about 20 to 25 hours a week. I have a super balanced life. I'm a volleyball coach, a football coach, a basketball coach. I've got 3 young kids. And this is the sweet spot for young kids in spending time with them. So I've got to do that. That's where I'm at now. I've got an amazing team. I've got my partner, Glenn, that handles our CapEx. I've got my partner, Tyler, who handles all of our operations and asset management. And we've got a CFO that handles our finances. And so I'm very fortunate to be able to focus on the financial, the money, raising capital, working with investors and acquisitions. And where I'm going is all I care about at this point is more passive income, more freedom of time, more freedom of relationships, being able to support my single mom. My father passed away a couple of years ago. And being able to pass along all the things that we've done, learned, and acquired, and use that for the greater good, the things and the groups and the charities that we care about. That's where I'm going.
That's cool. I'm just from a purely, I guess, I don't know the way to put this. You said you're trying to develop more passive income. To what end? There's always this next level, I think, that every entrepreneur wants to get to, and it's this insatiable, like, man, if I can just get the next. And then it becomes its own kind of self-unserving goal in its own right. Why do you want more passive income?
So our company, our HQ, is called 950 Management. So we don't have a goal of acquiring 10 million of passive income. Right now, I've got about $13 million a year flowing in gross income through my apartment complexes. And that's just my Cleveland-based portfolio.
Sure.
That does not count the stuff we have in Houston, does not count the stuff we have in Atlanta. That's just the stuff in Cleveland in my backyard, about 13 million bucks.
Right.
It's interesting, Sam, when I meet with, I met with the president of my old high school, Padua Franciscan High School. And they have all these goals for how to impact young kids, high school kids, right? Their endowment they need to build, tuition that they need to pay for, trips, all these different sport functions and fine arts. They don't have enough money, So 950 Management is important to me because 950 Management represents 950 units. It's our annual goal to buy 950 units. And the reason why 950, Sam, is because we make about $1,400 of net free cash flow per year per unit. So that 950 times 1,400 represents $1.2 million. It's $100,000 a month. So my goal every year is to add $100,000 a month of net free cash flow, not NOI, but after all the expenses, after all the debt service, and after all my investors, pref payments, and everything, because that is forever income that can be used to impact those types of organizations that are going to take care. I'm very passionate for kids. I think there's more kids growing up in divorced houses. It's a fact that 70% of African-American kids are raised in single parent homes. It's a fact that more parents are disenchanted, that are worried about more about their own social media profile than raising their children. So I think kids are at significant disadvantages, even though the world is more rich and wealthy than it's ever been. And so I think that really is my goal, is just, passing that back and taking care of those kids, basically ages kind of 5, 6, all the way up to 18 years old. And so that's where the 950 comes in. That's my annual goal. So there isn't like an end game for me. It's 950 a year.
I love that. No, that's great. And the reason I asked that, because I knew you had more to it. There was more to the story than, man, I just want to add another zero to my bank account. Like, yeah, it's at some point that becomes meaningless. So I love the trajectory of, hey, this is where we're going and here's why. It serves a greater purpose than just making more money.
The other thing, Sam, is listen, like I'm a pancreatic cancer survivor.
Oh, wow.
Pancreatic cancer had just a 6% survival rate when I was diagnosed.
Wow.
I was diagnosed in 2011. And shortly after I was diagnosed, Steve Jobs died of pancreatic cancer. He had the same exact diagnosis as me, the same type, the same style of pancreatic cancer. It was almost the same exact diagnosis, and he died.
Mm-hmm.
Here I am, 35 years old, wife, 2 small kids. My wife was 8 months pregnant. And now I get this diagnosis, and I find out that the world's probably most famous human is dying of the same disease that I was just diagnosed with. And I'm like, oh, crap.
Right.
My father, to his credit, again, my father died just a couple of years ago, but my father was my first great entrepreneurial mentor. He was an entrepreneur. And he said, look, son, in the second half of your life, you have to figure out why you were one of the 6 that were spared. Because 94 people out of 100 who are diagnosed the same as you are dead.
Wow.
And so you have an obligation. You have more talent than you need. You were spared for a reason. You have a beautiful wife and children that you're given a second chance to be with them and help them and grow that family. So now in the second half, I've been 10 years now since that surgery and recovery, but I still feel like I'm trying to figure it out. But multifamily is the avenue, the tool that I found to be most successful. I've done residential investing. I've done private lending. I've done commercial investing of all different types, hard money lending. The infinite income, the long-term passive income, the equity, all those different types, the tax advantages, all of that serves my greater purpose of using the talent and the second chance that I was given. So it has that larger purpose for me.
That's awesome. I love that. So that puts you roughly 46 at this point, right?
That's exactly right. You bet.
Okay. That's awesome. And one of the things we talked about here before kicking off the show is that you had been investing in real estate for 20 plus years, and then it's only been really in the last 8 years. It sounds like this coincides nicely right along with, getting over pancreatic cancer. You've been investing in commercial real estate for the last 8 years. What was the transition, other than maybe pancreatic cancer, that, hey, go do something bigger?
Yeah.
What was the motivator for moving into commercial?
Transition was painful, Sam. It was awful. No, because I was realizing in 2010, 2011, we had made a lot of good choices. We got into pre-foreclosure investing, residential, short sales, all that kind of stuff, foreclosure investing before the crisis. So we started in 2004, 5, 6. The crisis happens in 08. We're ahead of the game. We become a national speaker, all these kind of things. But I'm also realizing that resi is very transactional, right? And if you buy even a single family, a duplex, it's just not very big, a fourplex. You're not really moving the needle all that much. So I had this desire to get into commercial, didn't know how. Then I was really ripped out of the game. When I got diagnosed with cancer, I was pulled away from my business for about 9 months. About 3 months prior to the surgery, preparing all kinds of doctor's appointments, just a bazillion tests. And my wife, it was 8 months pregnant. She had an emergency C-section, so I had to help her with that, even though I knew I was sick. My son was born right before my surgery. And then 6 months after my surgery, no income.
Yeah.
No, like zero. My bank account's dwindling down to nothing, even though I had success in resi and made a lot of money. it was bleeding. I was hemorrhaging. I had employees I couldn't pay. My personal bank accounts feeding the business, that's dwindling down from hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands down every month, like by 50 grand a month, negative, going down, down, down. So it was painful. But what I realized coming out of that was that I had made this mistake. Okay. I read Rich Dad Poor Dad like everybody else about passive income, right? Robert Kiyosaki, Robert Allen, multiple streams of income. And I thought I was doing it, but I really wasn't. I was just flipping houses for income. So what I knew was resi. So I decided to stand up a private equity fund, recruit all this private capital into a PPM, into a private equity fund, and then lend it out in private money and hard money loans for both resi and small balance commercial. Yeah. I started creating passive income by being that lender out of the fund. And that worked, but it didn't create enough passive income. And then every 6 months to 2 years, those loans would pay off. And I'm like, crap, I got to go make another loan. I hated when loans got paid off.
Right.
Because they were producing passive income.
Right.
And then my investors in the fund started asking me, Josh, this is great, but what else do you got? And I had some buddies of mine that started investing in apartments back in 2015, 2016, 2017. And they needed more equity. They needed somebody with a balance sheet to kind of co-sponsor their loan. So I started out doing co-sponsorships and raising capital. And then I realized, like, wow, why don't I just do the operations also? And then that evolved into that. So it's very much an evolution. And I kind of feel like, honestly, like the world, God, whatever you believe in, right? I believe in God. I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. But whatever you believe in, I feel like the world pushed me down this path and taught me these lessons so I could end up where I'm at today. Because without the lesson of cancer, without the lesson of the private equity fund, without the lesson of JVing on my first couple of multifamily deals, I wouldn't know exactly how to operate the business today. And all that's lined up to where we have a really tight operation today.
Yeah, it sounds like you have an incredibly tight operation today. I mean, you named off 2 or 3 other seats on the bus that you have put in there. You have your asset manager. You had, you had four people, including yourself, I think was what I heard you rattle off.
My partner, Glenn, handles our capital improvement swim lane because we own the construction company. We do a lot of value add improvements and we do them all in-house. So we are the GC. Tyler is our partner and he handles all of our asset management. So he oversees the third-party property managers. Our third-party property managers can't stand us because we asset manage the shit out of them. And then Roberto is my CFO. And he has a small piece of equity that we've given him in some deals. But he's the CFO that works with our property managers and our capital improvement to kind of do all the financials. And I focus on all those financials, the underwriting, acquisitions, and raising all the capital. So I get to sit way above the business, outside the business and above the business. And I get to do things like podcasts and investor relations, investor recruiting. And of course, I get the final say on everything we buy, the final underwrite and the final review and the final price. So I really feel like each one of us is sitting in the right bucket, in the right swim lane that optimizes their skill sets.
How did you build that team? I mean, was this from just years of being in the business and saying, hey, I want to start something great. You want to come join me? What was that process like?
You know what I realized, Sam, when I started buying multifamily is that there were these swim lanes, right? So I think the first thing is identifying as the owner, CEO, founder, what are these swim lanes that if you grow a big enough portfolio that somebody can just do that one thing, right? So I thought, okay, somebody's going to need to basically look at all the deals and focus on broker relationships and acquisitions. Somebody's going to really need to focus on recruiting capital, working with private investors. Somebody's going to, if we're going to do the construction and do it well and control the process, control expenses and budget, somebody's going to have to do that. Somebody's going to have to do property management or sit above the property manager. Somebody's going to have to take care of the financials. So we broke it out into 5 swim lanes. And then a couple of those were able to kind of come together where like really Glenn focuses on this capital improvements, but he's also got relationships with some investors, right? Tyler doesn't really have many relationships with any of our investors, but he's a little younger, likes to hustle, likes the communication, the networking with brokers. So he had about 100 units of single family that he was managing. So he was already kind of good at property management, knew a lot about the costs of materials and labor. So we, first of all, paid attention to what the swim lanes could be. We drew out all the job descriptions. Then over time, we realized that there were certain people that were on the team that were already kind of fit those, right? I met Roberto, my CFO, 15 years ago, and I actually met him. He had moved from New York, New Jersey to the Cleveland area. I hired him through a temp agency. I just needed more finance and accounting help.
Right.
He had just moved into town. So we brought him on, and he's just evolved he's been in digital marketing with me. He's been in Resi, Flips, the fund, all that's been an evolution. I think the big thing, Sam, with the team is that you have to hire the right people. Sure, that's critically important. But I think a lot of small business owners and entrepreneurs have way too short and way too immediate of an expectation of new hires. They expect people to come in and be Superman in the first 30 to 90 days of a new hire. The beautiful thing about commercial investing and multifamily is that it's an infinite game. You're playing the long term, right? And when you do that, you can have a longer term view of your staff. So I tell my team, look, it's going to take people a year until they really know all the systems, the software, the people, the culture, personalities, everything that they need to be successful. Those are some of the things that went into these. I met Glenn in college. He had moved away. He was in corporate world forever. He was getting a divorce. He called me up and said, Josh, I'm moving back. I knew Glenn had a tremendous amount of Fortune 500 experience, and I knew he'd be great at SOPs and defining swim lanes and managing the day-to-day operation of the business. And then Tyler, we brought on actually as our VP of acquisitions when we had the fund years and years ago. So he was a director at Quicken Loans. So he was used to the transactional nature of that. He was used to the transactional nature of property management. And when we decided to go into full time and push all of our chips in as an owner operator, I knew he'd be good at property management and acquisitions. So some of it kind of stumbled into, but I think it started, Sam, with knowing those swim lanes. And we knew what we were trying to find and recruit to.
And that's so imperative, I think, is defining, you call it defining your swim lanes. I think it even goes to, to one step even further back, which is, where are we swimming? Like, where are we going? Like, what do we want and why? And once you kind of know that, then you can put the people in the lanes and then you can build your team. But I love
management, man, like we talked about, right? That's what we knew what we wanted to do. 950 units a year. And then the swim lanes of who do we need to help us do that?
Right. No, that's absolutely awesome. I love that. You guys have done, and you knew this number off the top of your head, but you said you just wrapped up, I think, your 19th syndication.
Right.
That's really cool. Other than raising money from private investors, have you guys done anything on the institutional capital side of things?
Not for equity. No. Well, I have one large $100 million deal we own in Houston. It's a 552 unit. It's actually 600 units now because we did some conversions. We turned some big.
It's huge.
Oh yeah, I thought you were making a comment. Yeah, it's huge.
So Mike was on mute. That's massive. That's a small city, almost 600 or it is 600 units.
Yeah, we converted some of the large 3 and 4 bedroom units into smaller 1-1s and 2-1s because the big footprint was too big, and honestly, there's not a lot of demand for a 4-bedroom apartment or even 3-bedroom apartments. So we converted it. But long short, the raising capital is key, right? But that one had some institutional money on it. We had a family office that came in, wrote a check, and recruited some capital, and they became a GP. But almost everything else we do is truly, they're mostly accredited investors, but it's guys that put in between 100,000 and let's say $500,000. And I spend a lot of my time talking to those guys, warming them up, asking questions, creating that prior existing relationship, because I like the control that gives us. The more institutional equity we give, the more family office equity we recruit, the less control you have. They want more control.
For sure.
And I like to have as much control as possible. So that's why we started the construction company. We focus on really true private investors. They're not mom and pops. These guys are usually very accredited with, millions of dollars, but some people are not. some people are, they're non-accredited. We do a 506B and they've got, 100 grand, 200 grand. We'll do some 506B stuff because we've got a lot of relationships. But that to me is key. That's that money, that private money that allows you to control the deal, keep more equity for yourself, and then ultimately dictate where you're going to go and not have Big Brother looking over your shoulder.
Right, and I've certainly heard it. You heard arguments on both sides of the story here, where it's like, hey, you know what, institutional money is the way to go, and I also hear it from your side, which is, and I tend to probably fall more into your camp than not, which is, look, we want to be in control, and I don't need somebody breathing down my neck. There was somebody else I had on the show a while back, and they said, man, that's all they did was institutional capital, and then one day they just said, we're out, like not doing that ever again. And all they do, and this guy raised, hundreds of millions, if not billions, and he just said, no, we're only doing private capital from this point forward. So it's always interesting to get the multiple perspectives on why people do what they do. You said you really enjoy the conversations you have with your investors. What do you feel, or at least I heard you say that, maybe you didn't actually say that, but it seemed like you enjoy it. So maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, but what do you feel like are some key questions that you really like to ask investors as you get to know them that maybe are not the standard, just canned questions?
Sure. I think it starts with posture, and here's how I posture with private investors. Whether somebody finds me through a podcast or gets referred to me or follows me online or opts into our investor portal, or it's just a friend that refers a friend, doesn't matter where they come from. I always start with the same thing, which is if I get on the phone with them and we have a Zoom call or one-on-one, I'm going to start and lead with this. It's posture 101. It's actually posture 401, in my opinion, which is, look, we do all of this through private placement memorandums and federal securities exemptions. The SEC has certain rules and restrictions, and the SEC requires that I have a prior existing relationship with investors before they invest. So even if I had the best deal ever and you had $500,000 that you wanted to cut a check for today, I cannot take your money. Okay. So the good news is that the SEC requires that I have a prior existing relationship with you before you invest. So if it's okay with you, there's no pressure here. I can't take your money anyway. If it's okay with you, I'm just going to ask you a lot of questions about your risk tolerance, about your current assets, your goals, your family, who helps you make investment decisions. I'm going to ask you questions like that because I've got to check the box with the SEC. Now, Sam, I've postured up to say, one, I'm not desperate for your money. Two, I'm going to follow the rules it's required. Three, even if you wanted to cut a check, I don't need it. I'm basically telling them psychologically, I'm not desperate for your money right now. I'm willing to take my time to get to know you. And then finally, Sam, one of the things I'll say is, listen, and I'm saying this forever, even when I needed money, I would say this anyway. I would say, look, I could use your money, but I don't need it. I could use your money, but I don't need it. Okay. So I am in the fortunate position that investors that want to invest with me have to qualify to work with us. They have to go through an interview process. Not only does the SEC require it, but I'm fortunate enough to have a lot of investors, and I get to pick and choose who I get to work with. Okay. So I have a very strict policy in my business. It's called the no dipshit policy. So I don't want anybody in my business that's going to wreak havoc on the business, that's going to ask 42 million questions, that's going to be disrespectful to my staff. So this is all the posturing. Then when they understand that, now I can ask them questions like, okay, have they invested in real estate before? Have they done syndications before? Have they done stocks, bonds, mutual funds? Do they have a financial advisor? Do they have other people that help them make financial decisions? What are they investing for? How long can they put the money away for? What kind of returns do they expect? Have they invested in cannabis, crypto, oil and gas leases, anything that's non-traditional? And then, so that's all the first appointment, first meeting. Then typically the second meeting is about a week later, 2 weeks later, get back on a Zoom. And I'll say, look, in the second meeting, I'm going to show you a past deal that we've done. And I'm going to ask you some more questions and verify everything that I learned in the first meeting so we can continue to establish this relationship. And then at the end of that second meeting, I might show them a past deal, some preferred returns, what kind of equity people got. But I say, listen, this is a past deal. You can't invest in this. So this is not an offer. And then I say, look, the third meeting, we're going to just verify this stuff again. And I still am not going to pitch them a deal. And then I'll say, look, if I found a deal like this, that let's say paid an 8% pref with equity, refi in 42 months or 48 months, equity in perpetuity, 20 to 25% annualized return. If I found a deal like that, do you or anybody that you know would be interested in something like this? And they'll say, yeah, me. What about me? I'm interested. Okay. So I'm not asking them directly ever if they want to invest. If you or anybody you know interested in something like this, I just want to be the top of mind reference if you know anybody else that might be interested. So I'm never directly asking them, do you want to invest in this deal? Okay. Posture, usually 3 meetings. I still haven't pitched them a real deal that they can invest in. Oh, they're foaming at the mouth to now get into a deal because I've slow rolled them. I think the slower you go, the more money you're going to raise. That's my philosophy.
I couldn't agree with you more. I love the idea. You've given us a step-by-step playbook there. Thank you for unveiling that for us, because you take more steps to this than I think even I certainly, you have more steps in your process certainly than I do, and I think that's brilliant. I love the slow play method, and it's not all psychological games. I mean, everything you're saying there is true, and I think the more we let go and the more we relax, the more our investors feel relaxed.
Yeah, no question. I think, Sam, the biggest mistake people can make is to say, well, if I find a great deal, the money will come.
Right.
I feel like you have to warm up a lot of money in order to posture with brokers who control a lot of the deal flow, as we know, or even posture up with a seller, if you're direct to seller, to tell that broker and the seller, I've got all this money warmed up. I'm just looking for the right deal, right? Versus send me deal. And then I got to go hustle to find all the money. I have a friend of mine who just lost $450,000 of hard earnest money on a deal because they couldn't get it all raised and closed. They went through 2 extensions and then still couldn't close, lost 450 grand. That's a painful ass lesson, right? That's because they thought if I find the deal, I'll get the money. To me, it's warm up a lot of money, then posture up with the brokers, try to find some off-market deal flow, and then say, hey, I've got $3, $4, $5, $10 million, whatever. I'm going to buy one really good deal. To me, that's a better approach.
Josh, I love it. You've given us so much to think through. You've shared with us so many insider insights here into your business, how you guys have grown, the struggles you guys have had, things you've done right, things you've done wrong. You give us a playbook here for reaching out to investors. This has been just a value-packed episode. I want to say thank you for coming on the show today. I certainly appreciate it. If our listeners want to get in touch with you or learn more about you, what is the best way to do that?
Yeah, I'm all over social media. Connect with me on Facebook, follow me on Facebook. Or you can go to our main website, freelandventures.com. There's everything from our portfolio, a bunch of YouTube videos, training videos. It's all at freelandventures.com.
Freelandventures.com. We'll make sure we include that there in the show notes. Josh, thank you again for coming on the show today. I do appreciate it.
Sam, thanks so much for the invite, man. I had a blast.